Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm George Chow. I'm the MLA for Vancouver Fraserville, which is far from here, but then I'm always here in Chinatown anyway, so I'm very happy to be here. Certainly I want to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, with whom we share this land, and their hospitality is nice to be with you. And I want to also acknowledge the Deputy Mayor, Lenny Zhou, and also the Deputy Police Chief, Howard Chow. We came from the same village from China back in the days, so I'm very happy to be doing the MC. It's certainly a very, very great day in terms of the weather, and a lot of tourists coming home, and of course, Mrs. Lee, thank you, and nice to see you, and Harry as well, which yeah. So I grew up kind of in Chinatown, even though I was not born in Vancouver, but once I landed in Vancouver, I was in Chinatown for a number of years, and I continue my activity in Chinatown. And so it's a very dear place to me, and I'm very happy today to, of course, introduce our Premiere to share another good news for Chinatown that would help us to a better place. So without further ado, Premiere Eby.
Thanks so much, George. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for being here with us today. As always, it's a privilege to be on the territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And I promise we didn't plan this announcement here just to be close to the Newtown bakery. That's just it's just a happy coincidence. Here today with Lana Popham, Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture. You've already met, of course, MLA George Chow. He is and has really been our leader on our liaison to the community here in Chinatown throughout his career, but especially recently as Chinatown grapples with coming out of the pandemic and some of the stresses and strains of the neighborhood. I want to thank him for that critically important work. Here with leaders of the Chinatown Foundation and the local Business Improvement Association as well, and of course recognized Deputy Mayor as well. Thank you for joining us. BC has been built by people from every corner of the world, and that's a huge source of our province's strength. But the Chinese-Canadian role in particular in shaping this province has been a very special one that it was foundational and continues to be. It goes back to the earliest moments of our province, and Chinatown is of course the place at the heart of Vancouver's history, of British Columbia's history, and of Canada's history right from the very beginning. Not only does it attract countless tourists every year who come to see the unique architecture and eat the food and shop and see the cultural attractions, but the neighborhood is still a hub and a home for a thriving local community. We know that in recent years, Chinatown has had to shoulder burdens that no community should. Issues of crime, issues of vandalism, and most disturbingly, rise in anti-Asian racism throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Vancouver's Chinatown has stood strong for over a century, survived in the face of the 1907 anti-Asian riots, as well as the threat of the so-called slum clearance and the highway construction period post-World War II, and will ensure that a century from now that Chinatown is still standing and still thriving. That's why I'm so proud to announce a one-time investment of $2.2 million for the Vancouver Chinatown Foundation. Today's funding will give new life to storefronts and restore historic neon signs. It will help with upgrades to the Chinese Cultural Center and will help realize the clear plan that this community has to revitalize the neighborhood for residents, for visitors, and for businesses. Our government will be here to support that very good work. There's no doubt that the Vancouver Chinatown Foundation has been absolutely vital to the life of this neighborhood. And it's everything from providing that critically needed seniors housing at the Maewa Hotel, which the foundation purchased in 2017, to bringing joy and entertainment to the whole community through the Light Up Chinatown Festival. My family has been a couple times now. We love it. And there's so much excitement about what's happening at 58 West Hastings. The recognition of the foundation that a healthy Chinatown also means a healthy downtown east side, and the community spirit that that project required for the Chinatown Foundation to reach over to a neighboring community is remarkable, and just a huge credit to Carol Lee, and of course the contributions of her mom, Lily Lee, as well. I am actually going to be going over to visit that site right after the event. I'm looking forward to that. Without a doubt, Chinatown is a critical piece of the shared history of our province and our country. It's a vital part of our story, our past, our present, and thanks to the commitment of the Chinatown Foundation and community leaders, it will be a vital part of our future as well. Thank you very much for having me here today.
Well, thank you, Premiere, and I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the Minister of Tourism, Arts, Culture, and Sport, Minister Porton, to say a few words and also to explain what the program is all about. But what I actually really happy to be here is this, Carol. This reminds me of the museum in Victoria, the Old Town, right? Which the minister will probably tell us a lot of good news about that. So without further ado, Minister Porton. Yeah.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm always happy to hang out with George, of course, and I'm really happy to be here with the Premier. And thank you for inviting us in. It's such a great time. I've gone on a tour here in the past, and the gift shop's amazing, but also always happy to have a bit of time to enjoy the food of Chinatown. It was great to hear the territorial acknowledgement. When we do that, it reminds us of our responsibilities, but it also reminds our hearts to keep that in a good place. It's such a pleasure, and you know, Lisa and Carol are amazing people, and the tour, a very short tour I took here before, was something that was inspiring because the passion, I could see it. I could see it in your eyes, Carol, and you've never wavered from that. So just always inspired when I see that in the community. As tourism minister, this announcement is very important. And of course, I'm also the Minister of Arts and Culture. So let me say, of course, Happy Asian Heritage Month. This is a very important month in British Columbia. And we all know that Chinese Canadian history is BC history. The contributions, as the Premier noted, are enormous and they cannot be understated. And so that's why the investments that we're making here to make sure that Chinatown has a great future are so very important. From the tourism lens, I have to say that there's 2 major cruise ships in town today. And when I became the Minister of Tourism, I wanted to make sure that I was on the street, on the ground, looking at things from a tourism lens. And so many times now, I've started in the downtown core of Vancouver, and I've walked my way through town to get here because I wanted to understand what tourists are seeing and how things could be improved and what the draw would be. Well, we know what the draw is. It's Chinatown, and it's amazing. But there are things that can be improved to make the visit better, to make people feel safer, and for people to be very, very excited as they make their way here. And so I think that this announcement is great. It's been related to me through Melissa and Grace, who are here today, how important it is that the storefronts show a message of welcomeness to our visitors here in Chinatown, that it's lit up in a way that people feel excited but also safe. And so I think that this investment is going to help with that. And I just feel so thankful and grateful to the community who remains strong through very trying times and gives us the inspiration to know that there's good days ahead. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Porton. And Chinatown is Chinatown and also Gastown. In between, there's a place called Old Town, which is at the corner of Carroll Street and Pender. And that was the Old Town I think a term that was used back in the early days when we had the streetcar, and that was the interchange for that streetcar right there at the Kell and Pender, and that's where you have the iconic Narrows building right there, number 5, which was the what we call the Chinese Freemason building. Was the old Chinese Freemason school. At one corner is Chinese Culture Center now, and the other one, of course, is the old Chinese Tom's building, which is again another historical building. So we are right here in the history of this town, and I think it's important, like Mr. Bolton mentioned, and I think now Premiere has said that, you know, since taking office, we have committed over $140 million to the province, particularly to the RCMP, in terms of improving public safety, because we really need to have that in order to bring the tourist, the visitor, right from the cruise terminal, going through Gastown, going through Old Town, and into Chinatown. And I just want to thank people like Carol Lee, who's passionate about Chinatown, and I first really talked to her and met her when she was chair of the Chinatown Revitalization Committee, Carol. And I'm really happy that you're still at it. We're still at it, and let's make Chinatown great. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Carol to tell us about her plan.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Premiere Eby, Minister Popham, MLA George Chow, Deputy Mayor Lenny Zhao, Deputy Police Chief Howard Chow, Chinatown supporters, merchants, community members. So nice to see Shirley here, my mom here. There's so many of you, my Vancouver Chinatown Foundation board members. It's just great for you all to be here today. On behalf of the Vancouver Chinatown Foundation, the Vancouver Chinatown BIA, the Dr. Sun Yat-sen Garden, the Chinese Cultural Center, and the Vancouver Chinatown Merchants Association, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to Premier Eby, Minister Popham, and the Province of British Columbia for your commitment to help revitalize Vancouver's historic Chinatown. Today's announcement is a turning point for this neighborhood and for the over 250 small businesses that call it home. I think we all recognize how difficult things have been over the past decades, and particularly in the past few years during COVID. But despite the neighborhood's decline and many challenges, people still love Chinatown and want to see it revitalized. Since we founded the Chinatown Foundation 12 years ago, we've contributed to the physical aspects of revitalization, like the building of, as what the Premier was saying, of our 231-unit social housing project at 58 Hastings, renovating the Meiwa Hotel, which we believe is the best-run SRO in the city, and lighting up the trees with lights and lanterns for Light Up Chinatown. We're equally aware of the importance of the cultural aspects of revitalization. We're in the Chinatown Storytelling Center, which we opened in November of 2021. Together with the Chinese Canadian Museum, will provide the cultural component of revitalization. Over the years, the Chinatown Foundation, along with the legacy organizations, local merchants and associations, have done many things to try to revitalize Chinatown, but these efforts have been fleeting, and there's so much more that needs to be done. An essential component that is still missing is a sustainable economic revitalization. We have ideas on how to bring businesses back to Chinatown, to build consumer confidence, to revitalize legacy businesses, and to make Chinatown the place to be once again. This historic investment of $2.2 million by Premier Eby, Minister Popham, and the BC government is a new beginning for Vancouver's Chinatown and will open the door for renewed economic vitality. But this is only the beginning. We still have a long way to go and so many things we need to achieve to make Chinatown the jewel that it can be once again. We cannot revitalize this important neighborhood without the support and cooperation of all levels of government. Alongside the leadership shown by Premier Eby and Minister Popham, I would also like to acknowledge Minister Sajan and the Government of Canada and Mayor Sim and Vancouver City Council for their leadership and attention to help revitalize Chinatown and the downtown east side. We know that revitalizing Chinatown is difficult and almost impossible task. Stories of Chinatown are an integral part of Canadian history. I think of it as symbolic that we're having this announcement in the Chinatown Storytelling Center. In the exhibits around us, you'll find many stories about the challenges this community faced during the gold rush, the building of the railroad, the head tax and exclusion act, and various forms of discrimination. You'll also find stories of resilience, leadership, and determination amongst those who fought for equal rights, justice, and ultimately building a more inclusive society for all of Canada. Chinatown is the physical legacy of that contribution and sacrifice. We know the task ahead will not be easy, but the DNA of this neighborhood, like so many immigrant neighborhoods, is made of grit, hardship, and resilience. I would like to acknowledge my business partner and co-founder, sorry I didn't mean to cry, at the foundation, Dr. Henry Fung, who was with us today, is truly the visionary behind the foundation. Although he became quadriplegic in 2017, he's still very active and we are grateful for his wisdom. I'm reminded by a quote by Nelson Mandela: "It always seems impossible until it's done." Revitalizing Chinatown, Vancouver's historic Chinatown, has seemed like an impossible task. Thank you again to the province of British Columbia for your support of the revitalization of Chinatown and making the impossible possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And of course, we have one more speaker, and as the saying, not the least, certainly a very important speaker. The next speaker, I have know him since he was 12, so I watched him grow up here, and he's devoted to Chinatown. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jordan Ng, who's the president of the Chinatown BIA, the Business Improvement Area, to say a few words about the plans of the BIA. Jordan?
Thank you, George. I was going to mention that as well, but I didn't come from the same village as you did, but we did tour China in 1980 when I was a young fellow, and George was a young leader in the community at that time. So, you know, the leaders in Chinatown have been here for a long time. We're all passionate about our neighborhood, the importance of Chinatown, and what it means to our history. So I'm really honored to be here today to speak on behalf of the Vancouver Chinatown BIA, the merchants, the businesses. We have the legacy businesses here that form the cultural heritage of our neighborhood. And we'd like to thank Carol and the Vancouver Foundation for their tireless work in Chinatown, and the province of British Columbia and Premiere Eby for the recognition and financial support to this important neighborhood. As has been mentioned, it has been a difficult last 4 years with the targeted anti-Asian hate crimes, social disorder, vandalism, graffiti, random attacks of violence, and being located in the epicenter of the worst mental health and opioid crisis in the country. For many in the neighborhood, there was a feeling of hopelessness and despair, with a legacy businesses closing at an alarming rate. However, as you've heard from others as well, we are a resilient neighborhood. We've been here for over 100 years. We'll be here for at least another 100 years. And we are proud of our heritage and our history. In 2023, one might ask, why is Chinatown important? Vancouver's Chinatown represents many things to the businesses and the residents who call this community home. However, indelibly, it is the heart and soul of the Chinese community. Its roots are deep in the foundation of the building of this nation. Chinatown represents the toil and sacrifice of those earlier generations, and it allows us to enjoy the lifestyle that we have today. So today's good news story is another step forward towards restoring the neighborhood and helping us bring back visitors, tourists, and residents. It allows us to celebrate our culture and promote engagement and cultural awareness. It will bring back vibrancy to the neighborhood and support local small businesses. I would also like to recognize that today's contribution by the province and others that the province has made, along with the financial support of the other two levels of government, highlights the importance of the neighborhood from grassroots to a national level. And it should also not be unnoticed that an investment in Chinatown will directly and indirectly support the downtown east side, our neighbors, Strathcona, Hastings, and Gastown, as we work towards a clean, healthy, and safe neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, John, and that concludes our formal presentation. And just want to say that we have actually added to the cultural components in Chinatown since the 1970s, when we embarked on building the Chinese Culture Center, the Dr. Sunderson Garden, and then also Carol doing the Storytelling Center, the province doing the Chinese Canadian Museum. So we're getting into adding to the cultural facility in Chinatown, because I think ultimately, Deputy Mayor, we had an agreement with the city to manage the cultural facility in Chinatown and continue on our path of making Chinatown as a UNESCO designated area. And this is still the goal for all of us, and that would be something that we would want to work on. And one of the things was to actually have a list and all the cultural facility that we have. And the big component, of course, are the family associations that exist in China, that are actually the backbone of Chinatown. So I'm very happy with our announcement, and I'm sure we'll be getting to a better place, even though despite the bleak years that we have gone through because of COVID. So thank you very much, and I think the Premier will answer the media's question, and Marlene will facilitate the questioning.
Thank you. As a reminder for reporters on the phone, please press *1 to enter the queue. That's *1 to ask a question. For media in the room, please identify yourself to my colleague in the blue blazer, who is standing by the microphone provided. And please make sure to provide your full name and outlet. Media will be limited to one question and one follow-up. Today we will be starting in the room with Phoenix TV. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Lisa Wu from Phoenix TV. Hi, Premier. I got the question. Sorry, I've been trying to squeeze between the cameras. Yeah, my question is actually in regards to the current tension between Canada and China, and how significant do you believe today's announcement will actually help the local business, especially Canadian business trying to still maintain a good relationship with their Chinese counterparts? And for tourism, you know, what are we going to do? I mean, we heard lots of doubts from the community. They're worried, given the political turmoil, there may be impact. So anything you believe your government can do from the provincial level? Thank you.
Absolutely. So my job every day is to look after the interests of British Columbians as best I can as the Premier. There are international tensions that are well beyond the control of any individual here in British Columbia, between countries, between, for example, the United States and China, currently issues between the government of Canada and China. Too often, these tensions spill over in British Columbia in very hateful and awful ways. And the community that bears the brunt of those is typically the Asian British Columbian community generally. We see a rise in hate, we see a rise in incidents of hate, and so you know, I think there are people who use these opportunities to bring forward prejudices and hate, and it's completely unacceptable. So for our part, today's announcement is about confirming that diversity is our strength in the province. That since the earliest days of the founding of British Columbia, that it was Indigenous people working in partnership with Chinese Canadians, and in a history that doesn't often get told. Those early days of the people who've been here since time immemorial, with those first arrivals from China building up our communities, that has never changed in terms of the story of the province, that it has always been people from around the world working together to make that happen. These are the stories that are told on the walls around here of the Storytelling Center. It's the living history of Chinatown. And today's announcement of providing this funding helps everybody understand that. Visitors that come in on a cruise ship, people who live in Vancouver who just come down to go to the Newtown Bakery or to go to any one of the many legacy businesses that are down here. This is our strength, this is our diversity, this is our actually one of our major economic and cultural contributions to the world, is that this is not only achievable, but that you're stronger when you work together. So I see this announcement as being very in keeping with that message in a time when division and racism is all too prevalent. BC can be the place where we're the exception to that rule and where we're working together.
Do any member from your cabinet, the minister or MA, lately express their concerns, given now we're going to launch this foreign registry, and any of them feel the pressure, or do you actually hear any solid feedback on that?
Well, from our perspective here in British Columbia, we see a couple of challenges here. One is around making sure that as a province, we continue to stay open and welcoming, recognizing the strength in our diversity. As always, making sure that we're looking after the economic side as well, and opportunities for British Columbians. I'll be on a trade mission at the end of this month to Korea and Japan and Singapore to help diversify our trading relationships. Trade is up 62% since we formed government. It's one of our major economic strengths. And diversifying those trading partners and continuing to show British Columbians the economic opportunities that come with being an open and welcoming province is a key part of my responsibility as Premier. So we're going to continue to do that work at our level. The federal government will continue to be responsible for our international relations. We recognize here in BC that this is a time of division, but for our province, it's a time to come together.
Thank you.
For our next question, we're staying in the room and going to Chuck Chang, Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier. Thank you for taking questions. My question is regarding the recent Supreme Court decision on the First Nations land title claim that was rejected by the court. The Supreme Court did suggest that the province may need to look at the criteria for determining coastal First Nation communities' claims going forward in terms of land titles. I was wondering, what does the province, what do you think about whether or not that is a possibility in the future?
Well, British Columbians expect our government to be working with First Nations across the province in partnership, and that's exactly what we're doing every day. It's a core commitment of our government to Indigenous people themselves, as well as to the province as a whole. We believe that working in partnership, we increase everybody's prosperity, and that addressing long unaddressed injustices is the way for all of us to move forward in reconciliation. Just last week, we had the Haida Nation coming to the legislature around an historic recognition of their governance model on Haida Gwaii. It was a significant celebration in the legislature, and our relationship with coastal First Nations remains critically important as we work together in partnership. We're studying the decision from the court. At this point, we've only just received it, but our work, we know that our work has to continue with Indigenous people, and in particular with coastal First Nations going forward.
And sorry, Premier, one follow-up question. What is your overall reaction to the decision, and do you think this will impact the province's relations with other land title claims with First Nations communities going forward? Thank you.
Well, we respect the right of all nations to go to court to resolve claims with government. Historically, that's been the only way the nations have been able to advance claims. And wherever possible, we try to reach resolution outside of court, but sometimes that's not possible. We're studying this decision right now and how to move forward from it. And it doesn't take away from or at all impact our government's commitment to work with Indigenous people across the province to address these historic injustices.
For our next question, we're going to Michael Williams, City News. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Premier. Just really quick, this is a one-time payment, I'm correct in saying that?
That's right, yeah.
And my first question is, it was mentioned, how is this money going to indirectly help those spending a lot of time on the downtown east side, specifically right next door, those spending a lot of time on East Hastings?
Okay, this announcement today is money specifically for Chinatown. This is around revitalizing storefronts, around historic neon signs, about the Chinese Cultural Center, and the Chinatown Foundation will be working with the community around how this money is spent to partner with the money brought forward from the federal government, the initiatives from the city, the partnerships with Vancouver Police, with other nonprofit organizations, as we all come together to address the big challenges here in this neighborhood, in the downtown east side, in Gastown, as well as in downtown Vancouver as a whole. It's going to take all of us working together. Specifically to the downtown east side, we have made a commitment, I've made a commitment, that as Premier, we're going to take this opportunity of an historic alignment of the federal government, of our provincial government, and of the city government, along with Indigenous leadership and community leaders, that the situation in the downtown side can't continue. I find it unacceptable that the neighborhood got to the state that it did, the level of desperation of people with serious mental health and addiction issues. It will not continue. And, but we know too that this is well beyond the capacity of just the city of Vancouver to deal with. So the province is and has been convening leadership groups that have a direct interest in the downtown east side, including nonprofit sector, community organizations at the grassroots level, residents associations, businesses, first responders, and others, to begin that important work of how we're going to move beyond the first phase of addressing encampments, getting people inside. We have 300 plus units of housing opening over the next 3 months, and that work is underway right now to get people inside and off of the street and out of the park. But in terms of the longer term structural issues we have to do and address mental health, addiction, and to get the community back to being a healthy, family-friendly, low-income community, that's going to take some time, some coordination, and the province is going to be doing that coordination work. It's related to but separate from today's announcement.
Thank you for that. And just a quick follow-up here. I don't know if you'd be best suited to answer this. As of right now, what currently is the business vacancy rate in Chinatown?
I think last study was about 17%. The last study was done by the city, I believe, last year, end of last year, around 17%. Was the number that we came up with?
And just off the top of your head, do you believe that to be accurate as of right now, or just from what you know?
Yeah, I mean, intuitively, yes.
Thank you.
And our next question is for Charlene Wing on TV. Please go ahead.
Hello, Premier. This is Charlene from Omni TV. I have a quick question about the former NDP Cabinet Minister Harry Lally, and he said he's joining BC United. Can you comment on that? Thank you.
Absolutely. I wish Mr. Lally the best of luck with his new party, and I wish BC United the best of luck with Mr. Lally.
Charlene, did you have a follow-up? Okay, we're going to turn to the phones for our next question. We're going to start on the phone lines with Jessica Chung from CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking our questions. Just wondering how you feel about Surrey Mayor Brenda Walk saying she will not sign an NDA when it comes to the report on policing in Surrey.
Thanks for the question. Our work with the City of Surrey continues on the really challenging issue of the future of policing in that city. The most recent development has, of course, been the release of the report from the Solicitor General, the Minister of Public Safety, fulfilling his responsibility of advising City Council, people of Surrey, of the costs and consequences of either continuing with Surrey Police Service or going back to the RCMP, reversing the decision of the previous council. My commitment is to work with the mayor, to work with City Council, to find a path forward to ensure that when people pick up the phone in Surrey, dial 911, that there's a police officer there to support them. And part of that work requires us to share sensitive information with mayor and council. The mayor and council need to see this report. The agreement that we struck with the police in order to be able to share this information was to ensure that sensitive policing information would not be disclosed. And I look forward to the opportunity to work with the Mayor and Council. Letters, I understand, are going out to Mayor and Council to give everybody the opportunity to review the full and unredacted report. At the staff level, staff are already working. Staff at the City of Surrey have the full unredacted report. They're doing work so that they can advise Mayor and Council on the best path forward. And going forward at the public service level on our side and at the city staff level on the City of Surrey side, discussions about the financial aspects of the consequences of this decision will be starting next week.
And did you have a follow-up?
I do. This weekend will be the first heat event of the year. What message do you have for the public on that?
Certainly as we see rising temperatures in British Columbia and across the border in Alberta, wildfires, there are a number of key reminders for British Columbians, certainly to make sure that vulnerable relatives and friends and neighbors, you're reaching out to them to make sure that you're in touch with them and they're prepared for rising temperatures. In terms of government's responsibility, health authorities have access to portable air conditioners now for places like long-term care homes and other vulnerable communities. We have a reimbursement program in place for local governments and Indigenous community groups to be able to provide cooling centers in community. And at an emergency response level around rising temperatures, we have increased ambulance capacity now, as well as increased ability to notify British Columbians of dangerously high temperatures so that people can prepare themselves. We've taken lessons certainly in the past, and we're in a much better position this year in terms of the upcoming heat that we're expecting to see over the summer. I just want to say, in terms of our friends in Alberta, our commitment remains in place to support them. We've got teams over there in Alberta right now providing support as they face a wildfire season like we saw just a couple of years ago, and certainly, like I'm sure many British Columbians worry, we may see again. And so we've got to provide that support, and I want to say thanks to all of those wildfire fighters, those people who are responding in crisis. And in addition, with rising temperatures so quickly, a number of communities are on flood alert right now across the province. The Fraser River area, certainly around Cache Creek, Grand Forks. The province has put significant resources into communities to put physical barriers in place around water, put flood plans in place. And there are people who are on evacuation alert. We're going to continue to monitor that situation. We now have, as you see the pattern of climate-related emergency in this province escalate, we have now a dedicated ministry around prevention and preparation and emergency response so that we are well placed to be able to respond quickly if the worst should happen.
For our next question, we're going to Joshua Wong, Fairchild Radio. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premiere Eby. This is George from Fairchild Radio. I just made an announcement today about Chinatown. Some of the owner of the Chinatown stakeholders, such as the government, reform Vancouver Chinatown, or the Chinatown Plaza as a multicultural food hub to attract more people and tourists coming to Chinatown. What do you think of this idea?
Well, certainly one of the things that we hope this funding enables is a continued role for the key organizations here, the Merchants Association, VIA, the Chinatown Foundation, the folks who are organizing around the Chinese Canadian Museum, to come together and find those opportunities to work together in a coordinated way. And that's what we've seen, and that's what's so inspiring about the resilience of this neighborhood that has come through such significant challenges. We will be continuing to support Chinatown as well as the downtown core through different initiatives, whether through tourism initiatives around food and visitors. There are two massive cruise ships right now parked in Canada Place. People want to come down and see Chinatown and visit and make sure that people have that opportunity to come down here. We have major sporting events coming. We've got the Grey Cup, we've got FIFA, the Invictus Games, and I hope we're successful in our bid for the Indigenous Games, and making sure that the downtown core, that Chinatown and Gastown are in a place where we're seeing the benefit of all that increased tourism as people get out and about again after the pandemic. There are huge opportunities here, and I'm so excited to hear about proposals like that, that people are bringing forward these ideas, because we want to partner on that, and the folks in Chinatown here want those initiatives to be in place as well. So we're all united in focusing and working together on those initiatives. We've seen it now at the federal, at the municipal, and certainly at the provincial level.
Joshua, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. This year marks the 100 years after the Chinese Exclusion Act became law in Canada. So what can we learn from this history, and how will the provincial government make good use of the Chinese Canadian Museum and Storytelling Center to tell our next generation, newcomers, visitors, and locals about this history?
Well, I think having this announcement here today in the Storytelling Center, and the stories that are on the walls here of the contributions of Chinese Canadians from the very earliest days of Vancouver's history really brings home how important it is to do that education work with all British Columbians. As a father of a couple of young kids, the chance to bring Ezra and Iva down here to tour through, to learn about the amazing history of this remarkable city that we live in, and to build on this, the almost $50 million investment that our government is putting into the Chinese Canadian Museum, and the remarkable cultural components of this place we're in right now with Chinatown, that will be available to kids and adults and visitors, longtime British Columbians and new arrivals, will really help to drive home the incredibly positive aspects of the Chinese Canadian story here in British Columbia, as well as those moments that are horrific and awful and racist. And so that complicated story about the good and the bad and the resilience of this community is told so well through these places, and really glad that our government can be a part of making sure that every British Columbian has a chance to learn about those stories.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you to everybody for joining us.
Thanks very much, everybody.